It's said about our current situation that a house divided against itself cannot stand. That statement was first made by Abraham Lincoln in the time leading up to the Civil War. But he didn't make it up. He got it from the Bible. It's an ancient and very true saying. Our house, our United States, is being divided against ourselves. But we're not only being divided, we are being poisoned. And we are being poisoned by one assertion, by one claim, by one fundamental question of our very legitimacy, a question made by a losing candidate in the last election. Now, when the former president questions the validity of the election and therefore the legitimacy of the current government, he is not only attacking the opposition party, he's attacking the individuals of the United States. He's attacking our reason, our thinking, our intellect. But most of all, he's attacking our very structure as a nation. Why do I say that? Let's take the first, that he's attacking his neighbors. Well, each person listening to this tape has a profession or a job or a calling or something you do. Maybe you're a fireman, maybe you're a policeman, maybe you're a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or a business person. Whatever it is you do, you have a certain expertise in, a certain credibility in. Maybe you're a world's expert in something, maybe you're just somebody who does it for a living. But whatever it is you do, you've been trained to do, you have experience doing, you have a certain integrity in doing, and that's what you do. Now, imagine if you were doing what you do, giving advice as a businessman or a doctor or a lawyer or a policeman or a fireman or whatever it is, and the person who's come to you for your opinion, for your services, for your expertise, stops and says, oh, no, that's not correct. That's not correct, because whatever it is you've said is wrong. I read it on the internet. Or I heard from the Dominion systems that Hugo Chavez has said that whatever you're telling me is wrong. Or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be crazy. They're saying that what you do, what your expertise in, you're expressing incorrectly. Well, we have an election system in this country. We didn't make it up this yesterday. It's been going for hundreds of years, and it's developed a certain kind of standard, a certain kind of training, a certain kind of expertise required. And across the country in the last election, as in every election, there are not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of people who, as a living, for their job, for their profession, administer, monitor, and tally the election. When you say that, when the former guy says, no, that's not correct, he's questioning the integrity and the ability of thousands of his fellow citizens. You wouldn't do it when, if you do it with your police, if you do it with your firemen, if you do it with your lawyers and your doctors, if you do it with yourself, it wouldn't feel right. Well, these people, they weren't all just, the deep state. Most of them, many of the largest ones, were actually appointed as Republicans. So when he questions their legitimacy and their honesty, he's questioning his fellow citizens. Now, the next thing is he's attacking logic, reasoning, and thought process. Let's leave truth out of it. Truth, lies, that's to be ascertained. He's just attacking reason. Look, he said early on, if I lose the election, the only way I could lose this election if there's fraud. Really? Is that really true? Has there never been a sitting incumbent president who's been defeated after one term? Really? Well, let's look at it. There have actually been several not so distant who've been defeated after one term. Hoover was defeated after one term because of the Great Depression. More recently, Jimmy Carter was defeated because of stagflation. Stagnation plus inflation. Nobody questioned whether he was a nice guy, but the job he was doing was basically not working for the American people. Somebody as well respected, who had perhaps the best resume of anybody ever elected, George Herbert Walker Bush, was defeated after one term. And why was that? Because as later President Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. Bush was presiding over a weakening, destroyed economy. Ford was also defeated. Now, these people were not defeated necessarily because they weren't patriots. As I say, George H.W. Bush probably had done more service to the country than almost anybody in recent memory. They were defeated because the situation in the country was such that people had lost confidence and they wanted a change. Maybe it wasn't fair. Maybe Trump inherited a pandemic that no one could have beaten. Maybe the same thing would have happened to Hillary or anybody else in that position. Maybe it's just bad luck. But the fact is, Trump lost in exactly the same situation as every other one-term president has lost. The country went south for one reason or another, and the people's well-being, their pocketbooks, their employment was decreased, and it was felt that it was time for a change. It's not so illogical, and it's certainly not anti-historical for Trump to have lost after one term. And so when he says the only way he could lose is because of fraud, he's asking you to turn away your knowledge of history and your common sense. Let's look at point number 2, the polls. Now, polls are not always accurate, they say. They're not accurate, though, when they are so close that you can't call it. In fact, in most polls, the polls are really quite right on. My first presidential candidate, you may be surprised to hear this, was Barry Goldwater. Remember, Hillary was a Goldwater girl. I was a conservative Republican at age 10, 12, whatever 6th grade is. I was definitely on the Goldwater ticket. And my mother didn't really mind because she sort of supported my willingness and ability to make an opinion, but she did sort of mind when I lost all of my savings by betting on him, because she said, even though you like him, every poll said he was going to get trounced, and trounced he was. The contest between Richard Nixon and Hubert Humphrey, which I am old enough to remember well, was too close to call, and it was a close election. But everybody knew that Nixon was going to beat McGovern, and he trounced him as the polls had predicted. In fact, almost every poll that has had a winner has been correct. Now, the polls showed Biden beating Trump consistently from the time polls were started, from the time Biden was assured the nomination. There was never, ever a poll that showed Trump would win. The question was really, how much would Biden win by? In fact, he won by considerably less than most polls showed. So in every contest in which polls have picked a winner, they have been correct. Now, you might say, wait a minute. Hillary was favored to win over Trump. But when you paid very close attention at the very end, the polls in the key states that went Trump's way were narrowing consistently at the end. And by the time election day came, they were too close to call. And those elections were decided by a very small margin. So Trump, who had never had greater than 50% popularity and was completely behind in the polls from the beginning, lost the election. That makes sense. To question that and say it has to be fraud is to attack your ability to think. Point 3 about the thoughts. How did Biden win? He won by winning back a group of states which had been so consistently Democratic that they were known as the blue wall. If you were going to question something, you should have questioned the 2016 election, in which Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, the blue walls, went red. Is it really so illogical that the blue wall would have turned back blue, especially in a major economic setback, when all the polls have been saying that they would do so? So when Trump asks you to disbelieve your thoughts, he's asking you to dumb yourself down. He's asking you to stop thinking. He's asking you to believe his word, the word of the one person who would benefit, against reason, thought, and intellect. But that isn't the worst. I mean, you might find that your policeman or fireman or doctor or dentist or lawyer is wrong. And even if it was logical that they might be right or wrong, still, that might be something that happens. There's a way to handle that. There's a way that we solve disagreements of that sort in this country. It's called the court system. The court systems are not brand new. We didn't wake up this morning or last week and say, hey, should we throw a rock in the air, or should we, cast stones, or should we turn the cards? No, this is a system that has been developed not only hundreds of years, but over many hundreds of years, because our court system derives from the English court system, the English justice system, and that has been around for 500, 600, 700, 800 years. And it isn't something that's random. It's something that people have spent, lifetimes, multiple lifetimes, centuries working on. You have to be very, very smart to get into law school. You go through years and years and years of training. They pick the people who are the very best at it, often, generally, to be the best, to be the top judges, and they make decisions. The court system is not something trivial. It has the capacity to, let's say, take your money. If somebody accuses of somebody else of cheating, they go to court. And the court, if they find it in the favor of the plaintiff, can take all the money from the defendant. They can put you in jail. If somebody the police accuse you of a crime, and you have your day in court. If you lose your day in court, you can go to jail. And it's a matter of life and death. We trust the courts to decide whether people live or die. If somebody is accused of a capital crime like murder, they have their day in court. If the court determines that they are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, they can put them to death. The courts are not something we take trivially. Well, the former president had his day in court. As a matter of fact, he had 60 or 65 of them. He tried case after case after case, and every single one of them was rejected. Finally, what if your court cases are all rejected? You still have a recourse to go to. It's called the Supreme Court. Trump had packed the court with three of his judges, and even they found he did not have a case. So at the time that all of his cases were found against him, then the election went, just as it always has, to the state legislatures, each of which found the same thing that the electors and the elected officials who had spent their careers found, which was verified by the court, that Joe Biden had been elected president. Joe Biden is not the illegitimate president because the liberal media says he is. Joe Biden is not the elected president because the libtards say he is. Joe Biden is the legitimate president because the United States of America elected him president in the same way that the United States of America has chosen every other president. If Joe Biden is not the absolute 100% legitimate president, then neither was Trump or Clinton or Roosevelt or either Roosevelt. If Joe Biden is not president, then neither was Lincoln. The nature of our country is to choose its presidents in a certain way, and we have chosen our president. Now, you might not like the president. You might not like their policies. You might be very critical of them and make fun of them. We certainly did for President Trump. But when you question their legitimacy, you are questioning the legitimacy of the United States. That is poison. I won't call it sedition. Sedition probably has a certain word. When you attack, as you did as many people did, the Capitol, really armed because clubs are arms, that's attacking the United States. They have a word for that, but I don't want to go there either. I want to appeal to those of you who actually still are patriots, but still have been confused about what happened. I want to appeal to your wish that this country get better, because I believe on either side, people are patriots, want the best for their country, or at least want their own, if nothing else, the desire for self-preservation and development and betterness. We want our country to get better. Does it help our country to be divided against each other? to be angry, hateful, and questioning our very legitimacy? I would just ask you, when we go on the world stage and ask our allies to trust us and ask our adversaries to take us seriously, is it in our best interests for some of our commentators to be questioning the legitimacy of our government and questioning, whether we should be doing the actions we should be doing? Does it help our nation when people are dying over and over again because it's politically not in your best interest to take the protections that you might to prevent them? So this division, which has been foisted upon us by the assertions of one man, the one man who would benefit from our attacking each other, from our attacking our reason, and from our attacking our structure, this division, this poison, is not in anybody's best interests. And it is destroying us, or has the potential to destroy us. As recently as last night, I heard serious enough journalists talking about whether we're heading for a civil war. Is that what people want? Civil war? Look at Syria. So it's time to stop. It's enough. It's time for any Republican, Democrat, Independent to say enough's enough, and to tell the former guy to shut his mouth, because this questioning of the legitimacy of the election, it is seditious, and it is time to stop. And I hope that now that a few people have joined the courageous one, the original courageous three, now that McConnell and a few other people have said, okay, this was an attack, it's enough time. It's time for them to say, no, it's more than that. It's not, as Pence says, that he didn't have the right to overturn an election. It's that the election was valid and he wouldn't have overturned it if he could. It's that it's enough for McConnell to say that it's an attack on the United States. The election was valid. It is time for us to join the United States of America and move forward. I really hope that this rant, if you will, of mine will reach some ears that can conceivably hear it, do something about it. If nothing else, I've at least gotten it off my chest. I've listened to this for a long time. I'm getting sick of it. It's time to move on.